Perfect. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so brothers and sisters, as you can see on the screen over here, these are a number of very special events we have coming up in the next few days or weeks, I should say, right? Ramadan is obviously the month of fasting. It is the month where the blessings of Allah are magnified like never before, right? They are the month there. It is the month of rahmah. It is the month of mercy, right? And in the spirit of doing so, we hope to share as much knowledge as we can during the very concise time that we have. I know a lot of us are busy with perhaps the upcoming i'tikaf. We're planning for it. A lot of others might be engaging in, social related projects, and these are all wonderful things, right? So Adl Advisory, inshallah, will, be contributing in its own way, right, through sharing knowledge, because knowledge giving or knowledge sharing is a form of sadaqah. And so everything that you learn from this event, right, please ensure that you share it with your friends, your families, and inshallah, the reward will multiply, and it would um, maximize in terms of, because as we know the hadith that تنقطع عمل العبد إلا من ثلاث, right, that the slave of Allah's deeds once they pass away is cut except for one of three matters, right? And the Prophet ﷺ mentions صدقة جارية, أو say علم ينتفع به, a knowledge that is beneficial to the beneficiary, right? So anything you gain from this webinar, if you share it, may Allah reward you, and inshallah it would serve as a sadaqah jariyah for you in this dunya and all the way afterwards until Qiyam as-Sa'a bi'idhnillah. Right. So these are the four webinars. We have, let me see, four special events we have taking place. The first of which is happening on the 15th of March. Right? It is a webinar on zakat. Very distinguished speaker talking on this, Mohammed Mish'al, right, who is a PhD student at INSAF University. He's the head of Sharia at Adl Advisory. We also have Brother Mohammed Zahid Mateen, who is a project manager at Global Sadaqah. In fact, he's the co-founder over there, right? All these individuals that you see on the screen are CISA certified, right? They are IOFI certified Sharia advisors and auditors, right? And we have the session that will be moderated, inshallah, by Brother Adil Sadiq, who is a master's student at INSAF University, and he's also a Sharia executive member at Adl Advisory. So do join this event, right? I'm sure a lot of you have queries or inquiries on zakah, right? What is this concept of nisab? What is the hawl, the zakah apply to all of your assets, right? What is zakah, right? And all its very nuanced details, right? Whether we're talking in a theoretical sense or in a practical sense. For those of you who are in the corporate field, those of you who are freelancers, whatever industry you might be, if you are a Muslim, then this is highly relevant for you, and you are highly encouraged to join the Idnillah. It's going to be a very insightful session, right? That is happening on the 15th, which is this Saturday, right? It's happening this Saturday at 2:15 p.m. Malaysia time. So do book your calendars and be a part of it, inshallah. Now, following this, inshallah, we'll have another Q&A session with the wonderful Dr. Mufti Yousuf Sultan, where he will be addressing your queries, inshallah. Right? He's been very generous in sharing his time. So let's take advantage of it and ask him the questions that we have relating to Sharia, relating to Ramadan, or particularly relating to Islamic finance. Last but not least, we have a webinar happening on the 26th of March. It is titled Infaq and Philanthropy, Tools for Poverty Alleviation or Perpetuation, right? We have two amazing speakers, right? The first of which is the Deputy Dean of the IIUM's Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, right? He is Dr. Habibullah Zakaria, who will inshallah be joining, right, as a key speaker, right? He will be sharing the theoretical aspects about infaq and philanthropy, all of these social finance or philanthropic instruments like zakah and waqf and sadaqah and hiba. What are he'll try his best to distinguish between these different tools and to give us a sense of an understanding, let me say, on whether these tools actually positively contribute to poverty alleviation, whether they serve as a counter productive tool. There's another professor of mine, one of my favorites on this. She will be highlighting giving us data on the impact of zakah and other matters. Okay. Oh, I'm being told that I'm breaking up. Is it better? Oh, connection seems to be bugging.
It is
Let
better
me
now.
let me check my connection. Give me a second. It's better now. Oh,
It's still breaking up.
okay. Wonderful. Okay. Oh, it's still breaking up. Right, give me a second. Okay. Hopefully it should be better now. Is it better now?
Yes, now it's better.
Uh-oh. Hello?
It is better now. Yes, brother, you can
Okay, it's
speak.
better now. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Right, so I don't know when it started bugging, but was it the 26th of March or was it since early on?
Actually, early on, I think you can proceed from 26th. Yeah.
Okay, 26th, inshallah. Okay, so I was just to give a quick summary. The 26th of March, a wonderful webinar taking place on infaq and philanthropy, all these tools of zakah and waqf and sadaqah and hiba that, essentially alleviate poverty, right? Inshallah, we have two amazing speakers that will be highlighting the role, the impact of these tools. Are they productive tools? Are they tools that bring about positive impact on societies and their beneficiaries? Or are they counterproductive? So inshallah, two amazing speakers will be speaking on this topic. We have Dr. Habibullah from IIUM's Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, and we have INSEF's Prof. Magda, right? Two amazing speakers that will be offering some insights on the theoretical and practical aspects. And inshallah, I'll be moderating this session. Last but not least, last announcement before we get into the session with Mufti, right, is a course that we have currently readily available, a course preparing students intending to sit for IOFI's Sharia certification exams, right? This is a very comprehensive course that is, as I mentioned, currently available on Taif Digital Institute's e-learning platform, right? This course is going to be conducted by two amazing conductors, right? The first of which is none other than Dr. Mufti Yousuf Sultan, who is an IOFI certified master trainer, right? As well as Brother Muhammad Mish'al, right? Who is a CSAA holder, right? This course offers it's a comprehensive but concise course, right? So for anyone who is intending to sit for one of the many Sharia examinations, whether it be CPSS, it would be the SEPA, SS and SG model, the CSA, Sharia Standards model, or the CSE, Sharia Standards model, then this course is really the best course for you to take for the upcoming exams. The course subscription is due to last for a whole year, right? So you would have a whole year access to this amazing course. It's going to be pre-recorded for the most part, but we will have a number of live sessions by the speakers. So if you have any questions that you'd like answered, then the speakers would be here to clarify. And obviously, I should mention that this course has a certification that is offered at the end of it, right? And yes, this would serve as a wonderful opportunity. So do join the course. Inshallah, if you have any queries, you could find us on LinkedIn, find us on Facebook, and inshallah, everything would be, looking forward to seeing you guys over there. Okay, so without further ado, I know I've taken quite some time. Inshallah, let's get into the session, right? So housekeeping rules, right? Some are more comfortable with asking questions by typing, but others would like to ask it verbally, right? Would like to unmute themselves and ask, right? Either ways, it should be fine. But please, the only request is that you keep your questions concise, right? State your name and then jump straight into the question, right? Let's save the background for the question and whatnot. If you do have a background you feel it's very, very important, then please keep it very concise so we can maximize benefit for everybody, inshallah. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to open the floor to Dr. Mufti Yousuf Sultan, first and foremost, to offer some quick remarks, right? A brief tazkirah before we get into the session and you guys can ask your questions, right? Dr. Mufti Yousuf Sultan, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone again. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammadin Sayyidil Mursaleen wa ala alihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we are here today in a very precious month, during the month of Ramadan. As we know, the month of Ramadan is the most blessed month out of the 12 months in a year. And particularly, we have already suppressed the first 10 days of Ramadan. We are only left with less than 20 days. And it's very crucial that we utilize this time in a very productive manner that brings us maximum reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. In this session today, we wanted to make it more like a Q&A, but let me just give a brief background in 4 to 5 minutes so that it sets the context, inshallah. As we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in Al-Quran Kareem that يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون, that O believers, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed to those before you, that you may learn or you may be muttaqun, you may learn taqwa, لعلكم تتقون. Now, if we contemplate on this verse, what we understand is that the fasting during this month of Ramadan is a practice session for us, is a learning session for us. And the learning outcome is taqwa, right? And what is taqwa? Taqwa literally means to fear in a way so that we can abstain ourselves from something. So in this context, taqwa would mean to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that we abstain ourselves from all the haram, all the prohibitions, and we follow all the orders and obligations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, has mentioned to us. Now this taqwa, these obligations or prohibitions are not just in our prayers or the ibadah, the ritual ibadah that we perform, or a broad level one, but also in our financial dealings, in our businesses, our trade, our banking, insurance, and so on. So if we, in the last 11 months of this year, for example, if we have been, not last 11 months, what I mean is that the last months until this month of Ramadan, if we have spent in a way that we were careless or we didn't pay much attention to our financial dealings, our charity obligations like zakat and this and that, then this is the month that we take steps, we take actions, we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq and return back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Just like we try to correct our behaviors in this month of Ramadan. We don't do riba, we don't lie, we don't speak bad about others and this and that. We try to forgive people. Just like we try to increase our ibadah, we try to pray tahajjud, we try to pay tarawih, we try to fast during this month, we try to recite Quran. Likewise, we try our best to come out of all the prohibitions that are surrounding us in terms of haram business practices, in our job, in our financial dealings, and this and that. So the purpose of today's webinar is to spark this message and spark queries so that we can ask ourselves how much purity we carry in terms of halal financial dealings, in our financial transactions, in our businesses, and this and that, so that we know exactly where we come from, where we stay, and we know what to do next. And thereafter, we can utilize the next remaining days of this month, planning and seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to purify our financial aspects, so that we are true muttaqun, we are true people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that fear is translated into the actions which are beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which does not bring wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the goal from this webinar. And I open the floor for everyone. You can ask your questions, or if you want to unmute yourself, you are welcome to do so as well. And inshallah, we'll try to respond to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mufti. Right, you heard Mufti himself. So if you have any questions, right, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, or type your questions in the chat box. Okay. Okay. So until people start asking questions, right, I have a particular question for Mufti, if the participants would be so kind to allow me to. The question I have is with regards to zakat payments, right? The question I have is, I understand that typically, right, zakat is expected to be, there's this concept of hawl, right, which is that zakat, for certain zakat assets, right, that once a year has gone by and the zakat quantity is preserved, then zakat needs to be paid, right? Why is it the case that we see people paying their zakat, their annual zakat, during this holy month of Ramadan more often than not, right? I think countries like Saudi Arabia, in countries, I think even here in Malaysia, people often take it as an opportunity to pay zakat during this month of Ramadan. So why is that the case?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Sano, for the question. I think as per the principle, any obligation, when it becomes obligated, we should try our best to perform the obligation as soon as possible. Because if we pass this world without performing this obligation, then it stays like a liability. For example, Hajj. If Hajj is obligatory upon us, we should try our best to perform it as soon as possible, if we have the ability and everything. Because we don't know how long we will be living in this world, and maybe we will have to pass this world without performing it. Likewise, prayers. When we hear the adhan, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in several hadiths, he mentioned that the good deed, the best deed is as-salatu li waqtiha, praying on time. The reason is when the azan happens, the waqt comes in, the time comes in, it's now an obligation. And as soon as we perform the obligation, we are safe. So if we employ the same analogy for zakat, the principle is that the moment it becomes obligation on someone, and when does it become obligation? As we know, in zakat, and inshallah there is a separate webinar we will be discussing separately, as Brother Sano announced earlier. But just to give a quick glimpse of it, the moment we become owner of an amount of nisab, and nisab is like a minimum threshold, just like in income tax, we have a threshold that if you have until this amount of income, you don't have to pay taxes. And if it goes beyond that, you have to pay taxes. So like similarly, we have a threshold in zakat, which is known as nisab. And once someone reaches the nisab, he fulfills the first criteria of zakat obligation. The next criteria is that with this status of reaching the threshold, he needs to pass one haul, and haul is translated as one lunar year. Right? So after one lunar year, it will be his second criteria and last criteria that he has fulfilled, which means now zakat is obligatory upon him. So the first thing he will do is calculate the zakat, how much he has to pay. So he takes all the assets and liabilities, and he gets the final number, how much he has to pay, which is 2.5% of the total zakatable asset. The second obligation is to pay it. So first we have to calculate it, because we have to ascertain how much we have to pay. And next is we have to pay it. We have to distribute it. Now the question is, when do we distribute? So again, as I mentioned earlier, the principle is as soon as possible after something becomes obligated. Of course, we have time, we can take time, but if we are unable to pay, then it stays in our liability, right? So let's say someone has planned to pay within a year, whenever there are some needy people or he knows some good causes to pay, is still fine from Sharia point of view. So the tendency of paying in Ramadan, in my observation, I have seen two reasons. Number one, for people who forgot or didn't pay attention at their earlier phase of their life about the date of reaching Nisab. So they don't remember when they actually reached Nisab. So now, in time when you forget the actual date of Nisab, the scholars mentioned that you should do your best assumption and consider the beginning of Nisab from there. For example, maybe my Nisab started when I first got the job, or when I first, got married, and I got a lot of gold or silver, something like that, in case of our sisters. So based on the best assumption, we take our zakat nisab date, so that from there we can count the howl. But some people even do not remember that. They don't have that best assumption. So they take usually like first of Ramadan, second of Ramadan, or third of Ramadan as a recurring yearly date on which they will calculate the zakat. So I saw one group, because of this, they want to pay zakat during Ramadan because they consider Ramadan as the date when they will calculate their zakat. For some other group of people, what I saw is that they calculate their zakat earlier as per their own zakat anniversary date, but they postpone it a bit, or they keep aside some portion to pay during Ramadan. And why Ramadan? Because in Ramadan there are naturally, by default, for every ibadah that we perform, there are more and more multiplied rewards. So they want to seek the rewards, and they want to get the rewards of both paying zakat as well as getting amplified rewards, which is fine. But again, I want to remind everyone, including myself, that because zakat is an obligation, we should try our best to pay as much as soon as possible, of course, in an effective way, and in a proper manner after due diligence, who we are paying to. We shouldn't deliberately, without any reason, delaying just because of Ramadan. Of course, during Ramadan, we try to do a lot of charity. Rasulullah Sallallahu did perform a lot of charity, as Ummul Aisha radiallahu anha said, Kana ajwad min ar-rih al-mursala. He used to become more kind than the wind, right? What she denoted is that he would become more and more generous, making a lot of donations and charities. So regardless of zakat, we should even give more donations, iftar, for example, sadaqat, waqaf, etc., etc. Thank you.
All right, Jazakallah khairan for that comprehensive response. Right, brother Moinuddin Jahangir says, right, he's from IFD. He says, is it valid to pay zakat with goods like a package of rice, oil, samai, I'm not sure what samai is, or sugar or cloth instead of cash?
Yeah, samai is a Bangladeshi food, basically.
Okay.
So I think the point of the question is, can we pay zakat using some commodities or something else other than cash? The response is yes, we can pay. Of course, we need to be concerned about what benefits the zakat recipient most. So if we know that giving food items would be more, beneficial for them, it is fine. As long as we give them the ownership of this, we hand over to them, then it should be okay, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Concise response. I have another question. Right, the question is it's something you touched upon earlier. You said that whenever the person the person needs to estimate, right, when they fulfilled the nisab in order for them to start paying zakat. So say I, for example, started a business in 2015, right, and the business was running since then. Yeah, so the business was running since then, since 2015, right? And having watched this webinar today, I realized, oh, I'm supposed to pay for the zakah since 2015, right? So the question I'm asking is, should I, in fact, pay the zakah from 2015, or do I simply go with the fact that Inna Allah Ghafurur Rahim, and I would start paying it from this year and moving forward?
This is a good question, and we receive this question often when we talk about zakat, because as I mentioned earlier as well, many of us maybe in our early career didn't pay much attention to zakat, or were not aware properly on how to calculate zakat and do I need to pay zakat or not. So at a later phase when they realize, then this is a very prominent question, that how do I deal with the previous years? Do I need to pay zakat or not? So definitely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rahman, He is Rahim. And if we seek His forgiveness, we expect that He will forgive, inshallah. No doubt on that. But at the same time, as this is a fard, it's an obligation that I have missed out. And it was obligation on me, and the obligation still remains. So the best approach would be, if possible, if we have the financial ability, or at least plan that way, that, oh Allah, I started giving. Let's say somebody has accumulated $100,000 of zakat, right? So he pays $1,000 this year. Oh Allah, I paid $1,000 of my previous zakat dues. Please forgive me. Please give me tawfiq. So this shows the abd, the slave, the person is trying his best to fulfill the obligation that he missed out, right? So that would be a better approach. Think like that let's say somebody missed out compliance aspects in any dunyavi, in our worldly matters. Let's say you haven't filled out the application form properly for university application or whatever, scholarship application or whatever, or maybe a license or business, etc. So what we do, we try to meet all the compliance requirements that are stipulated, and then we seek for the approval. If somebody has not complied with all the compliance requirements, only waiting for in the positive sense that the authority will approve his application, then is not the right way. So likewise, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, we try our best to fulfill all the obligations that He has instructed us. And then we seek forgiveness, or at least start to do that. And then we seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakallah.
I have two more questions, right, to ask over here. Yes, okay, the first question is still, it's a chain of questions, yes? The question is, same business person, 2015, right? He started his business, and by the end of 2015, he had the nisab, right? The nisab, whether it's in gold or in silver. The question would then be, if in 2015 he had the nisab, and in 2016 he had the nisab, 2017, let's say all these years from 2015 until 2025, he had the nisab. In paying his zakah, would he have to look at each year individually in order to pay the zakah, or is there a different format perhaps in terms of what the amount of the nisab would be? I hope the question is clear.
Can you rephrase the question, brother?
Yes, so I'm saying since 2015, this individual had fulfilled the nisab. 2015, 2016, all the way until 2025. Now, let's say the end of 2024, right? And the person intends to pay zakat. Now he's made the decision, it has a azima of, khalas, from 2025, I'm going to start paying my zakat all the way, right? Now, you just clarified that, yes, it is true that Allah is a tawwab, ar-rahim. He will forgive this individual. But at the same time, the person has to pay the zakah that he has missed, right? So the question is, in paying this zakah, what is the nisab he would have to follow, right? What is the threshold that you have to follow? Is he going to look at each year individually? 2015's, say in 2015 he had 100,000, 2016 he had 200,000, 2017 he had 300,000. Is he going to look at each year individually, or is he going to simply do an estimate, a collective estimate of these years and pay the zakat?
Yeah, okay. I think I got the answer, question now.
Okay.
Firstly, nisab becomes irrelevant if I have the assets more than the threshold. So if let's say the nisab is, let's say, I think if we translate into gold nisab, it's something around 22,000 or 23,000 ringgit most probably this year.
Okay.
So, but in silver, if it will be much much lower. So let's say he had more than that amount consistently over the years. Then the amount difference of nisab does not make a difference in the calculation.
Mm.
What would be a relevant question here is that how he would value the assets. For example, he had certain um, types of assets which had a different value over the years. So
Mm.
how would he value these assets if he doesn't know the historic value, right? So again, these are very tiny matters compared to the broad perspective. The broad perspective, as I mentioned, is that he will try his best to pay some zakat,
Sure.
and the underlying principle would be always to use the best estimation, right? For example, in some cases, it's very easy to recall and check back what was the price. For example, someone has gold bars or gold bullions which are zakatable across all madhahib.
Mm.
So he can easily know what was the gold price per gram last year or over the last 10 years or 15 years, because the historical price is always available, which may not be the case for many other types of assets. The main idea is to do best estimation and try to pay zakat accordingly.
Well understood. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. So let's just take it out of zakah. I was just about to move away from zakah, but there's a question, well, a list of questions over here, I would say. Let me try to read them. Uh, First question is zakah applicable on purchased land and stocks? If so, how should their value be assessed for zakah purposes? Would you like to answer this one first, or do I read them all out?
Yeah, I think let's read all the questions and I will respond accordingly, inshallah.
Okay. Second question by by Shad is, can zakah be given to close relatives? If yes, well, I think this is a very interesting question. Can zakah be given to close relatives? If yes, are there any restrictions on which relatives can receive them? The last question is, if I'm saving money but plan to use it within a few months, does it still count towards the nisab for zakah calculation? Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Shad, for the questions. First question is zakat applicable on purchase of purchased land and stocks? And if so, how should be the value assessed? The details will be in the other webinar, but let me just quickly address. When we purchase the land or stocks for reselling, meaning I purchase the land in the intention that I will sell it after the price goes up. For stocks, same. I purchased it from the stock exchange with the intention that I will sell it once the price goes up, not with the intention that I will remain as a shareholder to enjoy the yearly dividends, rather to sell in a short term. So in both cases, these both of these land and stocks will be considered as a article of trade,
Mm.
meaning we will consider these as an article of trade are which should be included under the zakatable assets. So when we talk about zakat calculation, first we bring the zakatable assets, which are cash, gold and silver, like all the different types of bank deposits or cash equivalent deposits, etc., or easy to liquidate assets like sukuk, bonds, etc. And then we also calculate or bring into our calculation articles of trade. And articles of trade are defined as assets which are purchased with the intention to resell. If we didn't have any intention, or we had intention to use for keep for our own usage, or maybe we had an intention to rent it out, not to sell, in all such cases it does not belong or it does not become as an article of trade. So what happens when it is an article of trade, meaning that we have to bring this in the calculation. The question you asked is how, meaning how the value will be assessed. So the scholars have mentioned few ways. For stocks, is very clear, because if it's a listed company stock, we can easily see the current price, current market value, right? So let's say I calculate zakat on the 1st of Ramadan every year. On that year, on that day, the stock value is 100 ringgit. Maybe I purchased at 50 ringgit, for example. Maybe the face value is 10 ringgit. I purchased at 50. But today, on my zakat calculation date, it is 100. So I have to take the value of 100 ringgit per stock. For land, if it is for sale, meaning I purchase it to sell it, usually the developer companies or real estate companies, they are the ones who will have this type of intention. Then in that case as well, they have to take the current market value. For land, it's a bit difficult. Difficult is meaning that it's not straightforward like stocks. Maybe they have to try a few benchmarks, maybe some neighboring lands, how it was, at what price it was sold recently. Maybe there are some other ways to determine it. But the idea is we try to get as much as possible fair current value, current fair value, market value or fair value. So based on this valuation, we will put it in our calculation and we will get the total zakatable assets. From there, we deduct the liabilities, which are deductible. Not all liabilities are deductible. We will discuss in the webinar, inshallah. And once we deduct these liabilities, we get net zakatable assets. And we have to multiply the net zakatable asset by 2.5% for a lunar year, or for a solar year. If we are taking solar year, English Georgian year, then we have to consider 4.5775 something, around 4.6% to be precise, and that will give us the zakat amount. So I hope it answers your question. Next question was about, can zakat be given to close relatives? If yes, are there any restrictions on which relatives can receive it? First of all, definitely yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Al-Quran Kareem, in various verses, mentioned, instructed us to give to close relatives. Wa'atu zal qurba wal masakin, and likewise in various verses. So zal qurba is the people of kin, relationship, meaning relatives. So if we give to our relative, that itself is a very good charity, because that leads us to silatul rahim, to keep the kinship, to tie the kinship, which is very, very desirable good deed for every Muslim, and very, very beloved deed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's say we have a relationship that is no longer active, maybe our uncles, our aunts, etc., and we tie the relationship. We try to call them, we try to, in several families, unfortunately in the West, the issue is even within the first family, like even between parents and children, the relationship is cut off. Alhamdulillah, in Muslim countries, we don't have that extreme yet. But what we are seeing is that from the extended family relationships are cut off with the uncles, aunts, grandparents. Usually, these are cut off. So these are very, very severe according to Sharia. And Sharia encourages every way to tie that knot again, to tie that relationship, which is known as Silatul Rahim. So when we pay zakat to our close relatives who are in need, who are eligible to receive zakat, then we get like two rewards. One is for the Silatul Rahim, the reason because we tried to tie the relationship, and the second one is, of course, paying zakat. Now, there are some categories where we cannot pay zakat. For example, parents and children relationship. I cannot pay zakat to my children. My children cannot pay zakat to me. Why? Because this is a very sacred relationship, right? If a parent is rich, the son or daughter is faqir, miskin, then it is the parent's obligation to give him nafaqah, to give him, to support him. And likewise, vice versa as well. If the parents are not rich and I am rich, I must, as an obligation, I must, give them the amount that is sufficient for their livelihood. There is second category but there are some ikhtilaf on that, which is husband and wife relationship. Meaning a husband cannot give zakat to the wife, a wife cannot give zakat to the husband. There are some differences of opinion, especially if the wife can give zakat to the husband or not. But the fiqh that I follow, fiqh Hanafi, here we don't allow zakat between husband and wife. The rationale is the same. If a husband is rich, definitely, I mean, husband, definitely he has to give nafaqah to his wife anyway. So we cannot assume that husband is rich and wife is not rich and he has to pay zakat. It's not even imaginable, right? Because it's his responsibility to give
Okay.
nafaqah to him. But what is imaginable is the opposite, that maybe the wife is too rich, the husband is faqir. But in that case as well, because this relationship is a very sacred relationship, that's why in fiqh, like fiqh Hanafi, I quoted, we don't allow that. But in some other fiqh, they allow that, and there is a hadith also to support that, and we respect that opinion. There are a few other categories which are beyond the close relationship, so I'm not quoting them. So if these two categories are exempted, then we can pay to our uncles, our aunts. Oh, I didn't mention the grandparents. So parent, grandparent, children, grandchildren, these relationships we cannot pay zakat. So I cannot pay zakat to my grandfather, for example. If he is in need, definitely I have to pay him nafaqah, right? Which is as part of my obligation. Likewise, I cannot pay to my grandchildren. So these two relationships I cannot pay zakat, and husband and wife I mentioned. So other than that, all other relatives, inshallah, we can pay. We can pay to our brothers and sisters if they are in need, no problem. If I'm saving money but plan to use it within a few months, does it still count towards nisab for zakat calculation? See, if you have zakatable asset, that itself is the reason of zakat obligation. Of course, subject to nisab, subject to hawl, etc. We don't consider the plan, because somebody is saving for hajj, somebody is saving for car, somebody is saving for marriage, somebody is saving for nothing to become billionaire. So what we are planning, what we have intention on these zakatable assets, these are not important. Other than the articles of trade, as I mentioned earlier, other than the cash, other than gold and silver, um, in these cases, intentions are important, and that intention is not about what plan we have, rather the intention of either we have purchased it to sell it or purchase it to use it and rent it out. So this is where it will make a distinction. Otherwise, the plan itself doesn't impact either we have to pay zakat or not. Jazakallah.
All right, Jazakallah khairan. Brother Shad, I hope that answers your questions with an S. Jazakallah khairan. Okay, so taking it out of the field of zakat, right? Because we do have a zakat webinar coming up, inshallah. The question I have is with regards to fasting, right? So obviously everybody wants to fast, right? But due to some unforeseen circumstances or circumstances that are unfavorable, some are not able to fast, right? Due to old age, due to sickness, for example. So in the context of sickness, right? If a person is sick, right, and they're required to take let's say, a particular medicine, right, during the time, every day at the time of dhuhr, for example, right? Does taking that particular medicine just a little bit, right? It's not food or anything, but does taking that medicine nullify their fasting? And if so, then why is it so?
See, there are two perspectives here to consider. The first one is when someone is sick in the sense that the fasting will either delay or prolong his cure, or maybe it will even make it worse, right? So in such cases, and that sickness is something that prevents him from fasting. I mean, he cannot fast because of this sickness. So then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has given them concession, right? It is mentioned in Al Quran Kareem as well. But if he continues to make the fasting, then he has to observe the rules and principles of fasting. So while we fast, there are few things that we cannot do. And for a very prominent one is we cannot eat, we cannot drink. And eating and drinking as defined as something that reaches our stomach. So when we take the medicine, it reaches our stomach. So from the ruling, the principles of fasting, it breaks the fasting, right? But on the other side, as I mentioned earlier, Allah gave him concession that he may not fast and make up later. So if the case is like that, that he must take medicine during Zuhur, and it's not possible that he only takes medicine, let's say during iftar, after Taraweeh, and before Fajr, after during Suhoor, it's not sufficient. Then I think of course, there is one more thing I want to highlight, that in such cases, when it's a medical issue and it conflicts with fasting, in such issues, scholars have always mentioned in fiqh books that the consultation should be with a Muslim doctor, because a Muslim doctor understands the perspective, understands how the fasting may impact on the issue, and he understands the importance of fasting as well. Whereby a non-Muslim, doctor may ignore the second part. He understands that it is important for him to take medicine, but he does not fully acknowledge or understand the importance of fasting for a Muslim. That's why scholars have mentioned to take opinion from them, the Muslim doctors, who are sincere, of course. And if the Muslim doctor suggests, then he can, break the fast and make up it later, inshallah. Hope that answers your question, brother.
Well understood. Inshallah, jazakallah khairan. I think we have one more question over here before we can end the session. Right. The question states that if someone has a provident fund, right, a retirement fund, and that they're contributing to this fund, and the funds would only be dispersed after retirement, right? So I'm guessing the question is, do these accumulated funds form part of the zakatable assets that the person needs to pay, or are they exempted from it?
Yeah, this is a very, very prominent question when it comes to zakat discussions. We receive this question every time. So, for example, in Malaysia's context, we have EPF, Employment Provident Fund.
Yeah.
In the US context, there is 401k, employee fund. And we have similar concept in bulk of the countries. So scholars have, detailed the requirements or the conditions on which we have to calculate zakat on provident fund, and one on which we may ignore that. If I want to summarize, the key idea is the nature of the fund itself. If the nature of the fund is this, that once I put the fund, first of all, it's an obligatory requirement, meaning that I must put aside certain part of my salary in the fund. It's a government requirement. Like in Malaysia, I think I recently saw that even it will become requirement for foreigners. But until now, it was not requirement for foreigners. It was optional for foreigners. But for locals, it's mandatory. So if that is mandatory, and number two, I cannot withdraw the money, unless and until I retire, or there are some very stringent procedures. So if these two conditions met, then scholars usually they opine that I don't have to pay zakat on this now, because I don't have hand over it, I don't have possession over it, and even the ownership can be debated. And ownership and possession are very, very important criteria for zakatable assets. So I don't have to pay zakat on it. However, if it is not mandatory, meaning that I subscribe to a retirement fund by my own deliberation, and I can withdraw, because it's not mandatory. Usually, non-mandatory funds are like that I can withdraw also easily. In that cases, mostly scholars have mentioned that we have to consider these for zakat. How? Just like we do for bank deposits, fixed deposits, or whatever different types of deposits. We take the end year balance sheet statement, or maybe the statement of the zakat calculation date. So we take the amount that we have as an end balance, and we add it to our existing zakat calculation. So we apply the same process for this fund. We take the end balance, how much is that there, and we calculate zakat on the whole amount. I hope that clarifies your query. Thank you.
All right, jazakallah khairan. It's clear to me. Hopefully, it's clear to the brother as well. And I think with that, we have come to the end of our session, right? We managed to finish just on time. Wallahi alhamd, right? May Allah enable us to maximize our ibadah during this holy month of Ramadan, whether it be fasting, giving out um, charity, whether it be praying, tahajjud, and reading the Quran especially. May Allah enable us to do all of these things. May He put barakah in our time so as to enable us to carry out our worldly affairs, whether it be assignments or work-related affairs, but without neglecting our religious matters as well. I think with that, we can end the session. Right, I'd like to say thank you very much
Maybe
once again to
I
Dr.
want
Mufti
to
Yousuf
share
Sultan.
some last words, Brother
Yes,
Sano. Yeah, so
absolutely. Please go ahead.
Jazakallah. We were expecting to have more questions on the Sharia compliance aspects of our businesses and trades. I understand the discussions we had today was more directed towards zakat. We have another session, inshallah, on zakat, as Brother Sano mentioned, and I will have another session for Q&As, and we hope that we can have more questions on that. Secondly, I also want to mention is that at Adl Advisory, as well as our Bangladesh entity IFA Consultancy, we provide zakat consultancy services, meaning that we help you to calculate your individual or corporate or family fund type of or different types of funds zakat, and we will be happy to assist you. If you need any support, you can reach out to us. And for Sharia compliance of the business and other thing as well, this is our business as usual. So you can always reach out to us through our LinkedIn or email or any other communication channel that you can find in our website, etc. Thank you, Brother Sano. Jazakallah.
Allah yajzikum, inshallah. All right, so with that, we end our session. Thank you all. And as mentioned by Mufti, do follow up with the upcoming sessions. We have one on Zakah, the Zakah webinar on the 15th. We have another Q&A session with Mufti on the 19th. And then at 26th, we'll have another one on Infaq and Philanthropy. And this weekend, inshallah, we will have, well, I already mentioned it, right? It's a Zakah webinar, right? So don't miss out. It's not happening next week. It's happening this weekend on Saturday at 2:15 p.m. Malaysia time. So stay tuned for that. And until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you all.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.